What's going on, guys? Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Garrison Roy, and today we're going to go into a really cool full-length interview. But before we get into that, if you have any future questions, topics, or guest suggestions, you can email that into In the Zone podcast 123 at gmail.com. So usually we'll have episodes where we'll come on, we'll rant, discuss some hot topics about what's going on in the baseball world, or we'll get some deep dive educational explorations for more of just skill acquisition and player development. But today we're going to shift to a little bit of a different zone, being a little bit more on the business side of things. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring on Kris Dehnert. Kris, what's going on, my man?
What's happening? How are you?
Doing good, man. I'm excited for this podcast. Obviously, kind of wanted to bring you on. Not only that I'm a fan of the products that you do, but also to kind of just hear your whole side of the story of how things started, how you're getting into the business, and yeah, just how you're living life.
Well, that's about what I do, man. It kind of they kind of intertwine so well, right? Like
They
just
do.
life and work and family and good and bad and all this stuff. It just kind of blends together. So, yeah, kind of found my, feel like I'm really clicking in a lot of ways, improving in a lot of ways, learning and practicing, getting better. All the things, right? Anybody that tells you all they're doing is winning is a liar. Uh, so,
Oh,
I like sharing both sides of that story and both sides of the coin kind of thing, so people can hopefully have a couple takeaways, right? Because I've done a lot of really cool things. I've done some pretty stupid stuff too. So learn from both, maybe.
yeah, absolutely. You got to fail forward, right? It's something
Oh
that
yeah,
you have to
fail fast,
continually
fall
learn.
forward. Yep.
That's it. That's it. So let's hear I guess, the beginnings of how Dugout Mugs started. I'm sure everybody's seen those where, especially like right behind you, if you're watching this on video, it's basically like a hollowed out barrel of the baseball and you can drink out of it, customize it however you want to. Yep. Looks just like that.
Yep.
Very cool. But super personalized. I even ordered a bunch for myself for all my guys that are coming in
Nice.
for um, the bachelor party, just like one of those little extra things to give them and send them off with.
Oh
So
yeah, people love them, man. They're great gift. They're great gift items for sure. Yeah. So there's a mug fairy. No, I'm kidding. So what happened is, I've had a lot of companies along the way, and I've seen some success with some of them. And others failed too. But there was a few articles online about me and some of the things I've done. I would say I really kind of cut my teeth and I had my first big break on apparel, print on demand apparel. There was a big run with that in the entrepreneur, the e-com, the
Shopify and
digital
all.
marketer world. And I was kind of one of the forefathers of that, if you will, right? So I had these big pages, for some of the biggest in the world, for Duck Dynasty and Tim Tebow and all these influencers. And I started asking them, like, hey, what do you guys want? And they said t-shirts. So then we started just ripping out these POD t-shirts. And when it was all said and done, we were north of $20 million in sales of t-shirts. Right. So that really got my wheels going, like, oh wow. So like just one to many, let's just sell one to many. And anyway, wrote some articles got written and things like that. And this guy Randall found an article about me, and Randall was the guy who originally invented the bat mug. And he and I were partners for several years, just up until last year. And he's like, hey man, I got this idea. I think you're the guy that can help me run with it. And we took a look at it, went back and forth a little bit, and I said, all right, man, look, so here's the deal. We'll partner. And I came in and I got 40% of the company. And I said, you got to quit your job and we're going to take this thing for a ride. And he was an ex-ball player. So that's why, obviously, being in and around the space, it made sense for him to come up with that. And my background being in business, marketing, sales, I have a massive network, which really plays into our success. And we ran it up, man. We were just, growing by triple digits year over year over year. And when we first met, it was only like $70,000 in mugs in the market. And today we're over $46 million, which is bananas that we sell
Wow.
cups and bottle openers and shit like that. But the end of last year, Randall moved on, spend more time with his family, and I was just having too much fun. And I didn't feel like I really punched it over the finish line. I think he wanted to see a vision of his come to life, and it did. We're Inc. 5,000 3 years in a row, things like that just don't happen to everybody. So I think there was a lot of wins along the way, and he moved on, and I wasn't done winning, right? I have
Yeah.
a lot of fun, the people I get to hang out with, the stuff I get to do, and now I get to develop certain areas of the business that weren't it wasn't a possibility previously because we just saw things differently, right? So now I get to play with a few new ideas, a few new products, some collaborative efforts. I brought my golf company in house, different things like that.
No, I love it. And it actually reminded me of I think it was a post on LinkedIn that I kind of copied over here was if you believe you're meant for something greater than where you are or what you're doing, you're probably right. And I was like, dude, that applies to not only business, but that applies to kids that are coming up in the baseball world or really any aspect in life,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you have that just kind of sense of what you were saying. You're like, hey, I need to push this over the finish line, or I have a little something more to prove, or have that chip on your shoulder for
Yeah.
whatever it might be, right? That's that
Well,
mindset of when you take that in. So not only in sports, but anything you do in life is going to be a massive game changer.
Well, and I think it really kind of comes down to I always allude to know your metrics, like what's important to you, right? What do you
Sure.
stand for? What do you not stand for? What's important to you? What's not important to you? Things like, me, I'm in my 40s now, right? So, like, one of the things that's not really important to me is the celebrity component of it. Like, I don't need to be recognized
Mhm.
for everything. Like back in the day, was the warrior and taking on the world. Like legacy was the most important thing, and whatever. It's these types of things change. So I think constant reflection, and I say this on like seriously every podcast. I think constant reflection on what is important to you is is paramount. Like you have to continue to do that and understand like what you stand for and what's important and what's a win. So to your point, I'm having a lot of fun right now. And I also get to be around my kids a lot and my family a lot. Like in 2 days, we're leaving for a 4-day weekend to, Atlanta. We're going to go hang out for a little bit. So it's like all of the things that matter to me, those boxes can be checked with what I'm doing. So why in the hell would I walk away from that?
Yeah,
Right? Like to spend 3 or 4 or 5 more years to build up an experiential company that gives me all the things that I want and has momentum. It's like, so I feel like you can make better decisions and more quickly if you're more clear on what's important, you know?
sure. Oh, absolutely. Well, and you hear that from especially a lot of younger kids who are coming up straight out of college. They're like, oh, I need a work-life balance, or I need this type of thing, or I want to travel around and have flexibility. You hear it all the time, but you're like, okay, what does that look like to you? Like they just say these very like awful, and I'm guilty of it
Think
too,
it,
right?
yeah.
Like, we just kind of be like, oh, I want this or I want this, but they weren't very specific on what they needed.
Well, or you look at some of the influencers. Like, I want to be Gary V. I want to be Grant Cardone. I want to be. It's like, but which parts of them? Because
Yeah.
certain parts of those dudes suck, and there's a lot of good parts about some of those guys, right? It's almost trying to identify what is important to you,
Hmm.
right? And that is what I've alluded to it before by saying, don't measure your success with somebody else's ruler,
Yeah.
right? And that's important because it's different. Everybody's success is like unique,
Hmm.
right? My whole life changed when I got sick and almost freaking died. Like that sucked, but I came out the other side of that with a completely different perspective on things, right? So what was important to me 1 month changed the rest of my life moving forward that next month, right? So it's not like you set it and forget it. It's like a regular practice trying to understand what's important. And like people get, just like you said, getting out of school, I think they have a skewed view of reality on many things for many reasons. We're not going to get, that's on another podcast, but I think part of it is like, you know, um, who they are then, not married, no kids, tons of energy, tons of grind and hustle. They got shit to prove. Like
Hmm.
that's a different beast than me in my life now. Right.
Sure.
So like, and if I was still measuring my success based on what was important to me then, I'd be all mixed up. right? So I think that's the most important thing and then also with a social media culture like we have, it's
Hmm.
really hard for somebody to be unique, and to be I say it all the time. You maybe you've seen this too, unapologetically authentic.
Yeah.
Like I think
Oh,
that is massive, dude. If you can find the way to just be authentic, I rub plenty of people wrong, dude, and I don't give a shit. I also really have a lot of great people gravitate towards me, right? But that's because I'm being who I'm supposed to be.
mhm.
And if more people focused on that, man, things get easier. You got to just trust me on that. It just gets easier because you don't have to remember the lie. You don't have to put on the
Mhm.
facade. You don't have to be who you're not. It's exhausting to be who you're not.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and like you said, the whole social media persona, like people, they go out, rent these big cars, or they do all this just to have that, you know, I guess
Yeah.
front. And you're just like, dude, like what's real and what's not? Or, even you see for some of the girls, they Photoshop stuff, things like that, and you're like, dude, like you don't know what's reality anymore if you have that in
Yeah.
front of your face all the time.
It's
And
the real pandemic, dude.
yeah, I agree with you
That's the
on
real
that.
pandemic.
Because you need to have a little bit more of a sense of reality. And I think,
Yeah.
not to get off topic too much, but I think it's a great tool to use, especially in business, to try to push the envelope for things. But if you're so engulfed in it, I even had to take a step back from social media where I was like, all right, like I'm getting on this thing way too much. Look, and even if it was good stuff, like it was the Gary V, or like it was the Andy Frisell was a big one, or a bunch of other ones that you're just constantly feeded a bunch of information, and it can kind of conflict what you even are thinking in your thought process. And you're like, okay, well, that's what these guys are about. What am I about? Right? You got
Well,
to kind of
that's the problem. Nobody ever knows.
yeah.
It's too hard. I now on the other hand, I also use that in business. I say it to my team all the time. If your plan is better than their plan, they're going with your plan,
Hmm.
right? So if you go into something, even if you kind of are winging it, if your plan is better than theirs, they're going with yours because they doubt that they'll be able to execute. And I think similarly to what you're saying, a lot of people look at these other guys that have reached the success, but what they're not seeing is all of the grind and all of the trial and error and all of the authenticity that is right that you know help these people become what they are. And again, I also would advise people, don't take advice from someone who isn't where you want to be.
Very true.
you
Yeah.
know I've heard people talking out both sides of their ass, man. They're like, oh, I'm a huge family person and I travel 300 days a year. I'm like, that's a lie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to take advice. You don't trust a skinny chef or a fat guy that jumps hurdles, right? Like they probably don't have the best advice. Uh,
Yeah.
just to, for being funny, of course, but like that's just kind of how I look at things. Is take advice, listen to people, bring it in, and then compare that to your own set of values, notes, metrics, and then make decisions. I mean, they can certainly help you make decisions faster and give you good advice, and life hacks and tricks and things I learn every single day
Oh yeah.
um,
It's always
from
good to
that
have that
stuff.
growth mindset for
But you
sure.
got to have your own, what is an equilibrium is probably not the right word, but you got to know where your center is. I
Yeah,
think.
it's where you kind of gravitate towards what resonates with you. And if you feel like you're laboring towards it, or you're trying to really push, it's probably not as authentic, right? Like you were saying, like you
Well, and
don't
you
have
waste
a lot
time,
of stuff.
and that's I'm a big time guy. When your time, my time is almost taken away from me, and when that happens, you realize how valuable it is.
Hmm.
It's finite, it's irreplaceable, it's insanely valuable. Yet this is the first thing people will waste. They'll waste it on stupid conversations. They'll waste it on being trolls on the internet. They'll waste it on trying to convince a Republican to go Democrat and vice versa. They'll waste it. It's just wasted, and it's crazy. It's crazy to me. Or to spend any time doing shit you hate with people who suck. Like, why on earth would you do that? You know? Um, and yeah, just a general concept of time, I think, is um, wildly undervalued.
Oh, 100%. Well, and to your point, what you were saying, talking about having it sounded like a very near death experience, and that does change a lot of guys' perspectives on how they
Mhm.
go about the rest of their lives. They're like, hey, you know what? You know, lack of the cliche term, but like YOLO, hey, like I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I want to have this, or um, like you said, you still have that time to spend with your family and go do awesome trips, but you're also really all into the businesses that you're doing, right? So
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, like what could you unpack that a little bit more? Like what was that thought process that kind of made that click for you?
It wasn't really a thought process. It was a coming to Jesus moment, is what it
Right.
was.
Sure.
I ruptured my appendix. It wasn't even a big deal. Well, I mean that sucks, right? But like it wasn't even that big of a deal. But because I was so busy with meetings and stuff, I didn't go to the hospital for a week. That's a big deal. That's kind of foolish. But I had to go to the Stanley Cup, and I had to go to a meeting at my restaurant, and I had to do all this other stuff. And the crazy part was I was doing it all without being able to use my legs. I had a double knee surgery the week before. So when I should have just been laid up in bed, chilling out, instead, I was on Oxycontins, which doesn't help your thinking process, driving around my buddy's Ferrari because that was a big deal because I had to show up to my meetings looking like, some type of way. And because of that paddle shifters, I didn't have to have, I didn't have to use my legs. Right. So, I
That's
was
kind
in
of
a
cool.
drop top spider with crutches hanging out the side of it like a real boss. But yeah, so then one thing led to another, and a week later, I went in the hospital, and they're like, "Yo, dude, you might die today." I'm like, "What? No." I'm like, yeah, you got about a 30% chance. I was like, "Well, 30%, that's 1 in 3. That's
Saying there's a
real
chance.
close for comfort, man."
Yeah. It's
I've hit better odds than that on other areas of my life, and so like 1 in 3 was pretty. That's pretty tight. I don't want to mess around with that. And you come out the other side of it, just like real. It really comes down to time.
Mhm.
I don't waste time. If I'm on a phone call and somebody's just blabbing on, I'll like, yo, this ain't gonna work. Bye. Click. I'm gonna save it every time I get a chance to save 5 minutes. I'm gonna save it.
Absolutely. Well, and your time's valuable not only to, you know, your family, your business, but even for yourself, right? And I
Yeah,
think
of course.
what a lot of us do, especially if we're go, go, go all the time, and I'm sure me and you are very similar. It's like, hey, we're type A, and we want to get things done, but we also, sometimes need to take a step back and be like, all right, hey, I need to kind of not be content or complacent, but just enjoy where you're at and take some time for yourself.
Yeah, there's
Because
not enough reflection.
yeah, yeah.
Just reflection in general. Why am I doing what I'm doing?
Mhm.
Does it is it in alignment with who I want to be, who I want to be seen as, who I want to be remembered as? Am I leaving a legacy to the general public, or am I leaving a legacy to those who actually matter? Like
Mhm.
that's a
Yeah.
the approach to doing those two things is significantly different. Do I want to leave a legacy for the world, or I want to just be like known as the guy for my tight little group of people and family, right? Like
Mhm.
that's way easier to do, and it's actually more impactful, right? So it's just what do you want, right? And there's no wrong answers. You just gotta come to terms with what it is. I feel like, you know.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Well, and what you were talking about a legacy, it's kind of funny that you say that. I was at my fiance's grandpa's celebration of life funeral, whatever you want to call it, recently. And, he's very respectful dude, owned the restaurant out in the Bay Area and everything, big Giants fan. But something that someone said, they were like, yeah, this man, he throughout his entire life learned how to love other people. And I was like, wow, dude, that if anything, if you leave that type of a legacy where you're like, hey, regardless if it's like, hey, I'm gonna do whatever for my neighbor or do whatever for my family, if you know that you're loving everyone that you come in contact with,
Mhm.
that's I think that's a huge compliment to anything for you to live, 85, 86 years, and then
And
that's
that's
like what someone
just
says about you.
well, you've heard the story about the dash, right? And the headstone
Oh yeah. Hmm.
between there's two numbers, when you started, when you stopped. The dash is silent, like, but what does it represent?
Hmm.
And that's what we're all kind of doing, is trying to figure out the dash, you know. And
Time in between.
a lot
Yep.
of people are getting off track on what they're doing with that little dash, but hopefully there's an overcorrection as there always is, ebbs and flows, right? Hope there's another overcorrection coming where, people start being remembered for that, just being better humans.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's always a pendulum.
Shortage of them.
Right? And it's kind of weird to even, me being more on like the player development side, like
Yeah.
same thing happens when, and I'm sure even fans can notice this too. There's like, oh, there's a steroid era, then there's the analytics area, then, it's going to come back and swing one way or the other at some points, but it's going to come back to, the pureness of the game or the way that everyone, falls in love with it is like, hey, we're just out here having fun in the back of the sandlot, right? Like just going and having a good time.
Yep. That's cool. Yeah. Time. Remember time. All that to be said, just be cognizant of your time, where you spend it, where you invest it, what you
Hmm.
do with it, who you share it with. Simple.
Absolutely. Love it. What's some of the things for time for you? Like, is there, I guess you could call them hacks or maybe little things that you learned along the way that you talked about that helps you be a little bit more efficient? Because having multiple companies, like you got to be very efficient with your time, right? But I heard, I think it was Ed Milet who said this, where he like chunks his days and does certain things, certain hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that something similar that you do, or do you have any other way
No.
you attack it?
Ed's actually a Dugout Mugs guy. He's got Dugout Mugs. Him,
Love that.
Andy, Bradley, Gary V, Grant.
Yeah.
Yeah, all those guys got Dugout Mugs. It's kind of funny. You're watching them and you'll see them on their back counters and shit. But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress. Um, but speaking of it, yeah, I like listening to him. He's got a lot of good advice and thoughts. For me, um, it's kind of like a hierarchy of importance, right? Like what is
Sure.
important to me then and why. Um, I took over this company and it wasn't left in the best shape when I took over, and that I'm as much to blame. I'm as much to blame as anybody, right? But uh, it needed a lot of attention. It needed a lot of love. So now I'm spending 99% of my time and about 50% extra time. So I'm up at 7 with the girls, taking them to school. I get into work around, well, to work. I mean, I work from my house, but like I get into my work around 9. I grind till about 3. But what's
Hmm.
important to me, hierarchy of importance, what's important to me is that I play Candyland with the girls. I was in the pool with them yesterday. Um, you know, do dinner, read them books at bed, and then I'm back to work at 8, right? 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10, 11, 12, 1. I went to bed at 1 o'clock last night because I'm working on a really cool project. So, there's seasons of grind, but it's a hierarchy of importance. What's important right now is for me to whip this shit. Sorry about that. What's important for me right now is to whip this thing back into shape, and that's what I'm doing on a regular basis, right? So, as far as time hacks, I think if you're really clear on what's important, you'll make the time for those things, right?
Sure.
And for me, I have 2 very young daughters. I have a 4 and a 9. I know how important it is for them to have me around when they ask me to be around.
Hmm.
you know we're doing a 4-day weekend this weekend. There's plenty that I need to be doing, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go because when they look back, they're gonna I saw something the other day. It was really dope. It said your job as a parent is to be memories for your children. I thought that was really cool, right?
Yeah.
And like this is an opportunity for me to be a good memory for my kids, because I remember back in the day when you get out of school, summertime and blah blah. Now it's like fucking just another work day, like whatever. But
Right.
back then it was like, dude, the world just changes the day I'm out of school. We watch the clock. Remember the bell ding and we're gone, right? So like that, and I get to play into that. So that's important to me. So I think it really, for me, comes down to understanding what's important. I have a whiteboard here. I got a whiteboard there. I keep my, I keep this thing with me. I know what I need to be working on.
Hmm.
And the number one thing I won't do is waste time on people who suck, who are negative, um, things that do not generate money. I'm not, the whole don't step over a dollar to pick up a dime.
Mhm.
that kind of thing. So I try to be, and it's a practice, it's a daily practice, right? I try to be cognizant of what the most important thing is. There's a book I read that I enjoyed. I don't know if you read books
Yeah,
and things like that, but
absolutely.
it was The One Thing. That was a pretty good book by Gary Keller from Keller Williams. And it's like, what is the one thing that makes everything else irrelevant or non-existent or something like that, right? But the premise of the thing was just what I'm talking about. It's about uh, identifying what that one thing is. And right
Mm.
now, I know that if I get Dugout snapped back into place the way it's supposed to be, it's going to be a money press, just pumping these things off, and then I can delegate my time elsewhere. But that's the one thing. Or cultivating talent or culture at my warehouse, that's really important right now, so I'm focusing on that. So that's kind of how I do it.
Mhm.
um, uh, People ask for phone calls, people ask for meetings. If you may get this, I know I get this, and I know there's others that are listening to this that get that too. No.
Mm.
Say
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
uh, I got a call coming up today with the Today Show. Like, yes, I will be there. Right. I had a really big call on Friday. I'm like, yeah, I'll delay everything I have going on. I'll be there on that call. So it's really understanding and um, keeping your slate clean and keeping your desk clean. Did you see we were on the Fox and Friends the other day? Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that on there. That was pretty cool.
So do you know, you doubt the story. I didn't even really tell the story anywhere. Maybe I'll tell it here for the first time. So what
Yeah.
happened is in an exact example of everything I've said to this point is in this one story. And so I was at, okay, Saturday morning, and I was out to breakfast with my wife, my daughters, my niece. We're out there eating breakfast. And I get a message. It said, "Hey, would you want to be on the Fox and Friends?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's great reach." I said, "Of course I would." And they said, "Well, how close do you live to the city?" And I said, "Well, I live in Florida." They're talking about New York City. And they're like, "Oh, we would need you here by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning." I'm like, "That's not even 24 hours notice, by the way."
Yeah.
And I was like, "All right, well, let me call you back." And I had a daddy daughter dance that afternoon that started at 3 o'clock. And I was choreographed on stage with like 26 other dads. Like, it was legit, right? And
Wow. You guys
I
got
have I have non-negotiables, and one of which would to be let my daughter down. That's not going to happen. We practiced for weeks on this thing. And I said, "Look, I'm going to go to my daddy daughter dance. When I'm done, if I can get a flight late enough, I can find a place to stay in the city. And if my team will go in on their day off and make products for the segment and drive them to my house, if I could do that, I'll be there." And 1, 2, 3, 4, it happened. Took a red eye, landed in Manhattan at midnight, crashed on my boy's couch at 1 a.m. Car service picked me up at 7. But before that, I called my team. I'm like, "Guys, sorry, I got to be to New York City in the morning. Can you stop what you're doing on your day off? Go to the warehouse, build me a suitcase full of shit, get it over to my house a half hour away while I'm dancing on a stage, so I can get off the stage, get a shower, get the stuff, and take off." And they're like, "Yeah, man, we got you." And which says a lot about my team and a lot about
Absolutely.
the
That's
rapport
really
I have with my team, that they're all in. Like, they see the vision that I painted, right? And they're all in, which I love. So shout out to them. But all this came to fruition in like 20 hours notice, products, everything. So I land anyway. I get to the studio, and I'm like, "All right, I'm here." And they're like, "All right, do you have a table? Do you have a setup? This and that?" I'm like, "Nope. What do we got to do?" So I started looking around outside, like on the sidewalks in New York City, bro. And I'm on the side of the Fox thing, and they had like a coffee table with like donuts and
right.
coffee for everybody. So I hijacked the table, pulled it over there, set it up next to like Bottle Breacher. Shout out to those guys, and Freedom Cabinets, which I think you even have one, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Shane's good. So they had all these nice displays, and I'm like, I got this crusty ass like coffee table, and I wedged it up, and then I found a rolled up piece of AstroTurf on the side of the building. So I unrolled it. It's green. It's like, "Oh, dude, that'll look like
Perfect.
grass." I unrolled it, knocked it off, and threw it on the table, and dude went to work. And from 20 hours notice, product that didn't even exist when I agreed, sleeping on a couch, waking up, bags under my eyes. So I was wearing sunglasses, and we did $80,000 in sales in like 24 hours. So what now back to the beginning.
Mhm.
What happened is I said no to enough people and enough things that my plate was clean enough that I could, at the drop of a hat, get to where I needed to be, to do what I needed to do, to absolutely execute on something, right? I also prioritize the hierarchy of importance, right? I also prioritize not missing the most important thing to my daughter that day.
Yeah.
And then I also I am so clear on where I'm going, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, that everybody around me, my wife, my niece, my team, everybody is so bought in that even if they don't agree, they're like, this dude sees the vision. Like, we got to support him. My wife's like, all right, look, I'll take care of everything. I'll take care of the kids, the people that are in town to see us, all this, I'll take care of it. And I was out and I made it happen. But it's, I feel like that was just a culmination of all the things I've been talking about
Mhm.
all in one story, you know, and because I'm living, I believe, as authentically as I can. There's always work to do, but I feel like these types of things continue to show up, continue to happen for me, because you're living that way, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important for people to be clear on what's important, and then be quick to say no, because the more clear you are, the faster you'll know if whatever is being asked of you is in alignment of that.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, I'm running left, and someone says, hey, dude, there's this thing over on the right. You want to check it out? It's like, no, dude, I'm running left. Right?
Mhm.
Like, that's a little example, but that's what it is. The more clear you are on where you're at and what you're doing, you don't get sidetracked as fast.
That's very true. No, yeah, you got to keep the main thing, and like you
Yeah.
said, you're spearheading through it, making sure you don't take any of those diversions
Yeah.
along that one path that you have. Whether it's guys who are listening, it's like, hey, I want to play Division 1 baseball, or hey, I want to go coach at X level, or build X business, right? Like all those things. If it's not lining up to that end goal, whatever you want to accomplish, then yeah, you got to learn how to say no for sure. It's definitely harder for those that are kind of on the people pleasing side. I know I've struggled with it where I'm like, hey, I got to have calls with everyone or say yes to every opportunity that comes my way that I think would be a needle mover. But at the same time, like, not all those things are going to be needle movers. Like the Fox and Friends, definitely a needle mover for the business. But like,
Yeah.
maybe, just little coffee setup for a guy who doesn't even know what Dugout Mugs is, and then you're trying to sell him on it. Like, that's probably not a needle mover unless he's like a
Right.
big influencer of some type, or even
You got
just
to trust your gut.
yeah.
You got to trust your gut a lot. You're smarter than you think you are. And the more you reflect, and the more you like meditate, the more you think, and then you get really good at trusting your gut. There was a situation a couple days ago, almost cost me $7,500, and I was trusting my gut. I was right, because it sounded X, and I was like, but your gut's saying otherwise, so trust it. I mean, it sounded good, man. And I, 1, 2, 3, turned out not good. And I was like, oh, you're right again. Right. And then you start getting that confidence in yourself. Right. And that's massive, just confidence in general.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think, and this is kind of leading to my next question, because I ask this a lot for everyone who comes on, and you kind of answered it, but you have this portion of when you're in like a workflow, right? Or like you're in the zone. I'm sure, when I relate to it in sports, everybody's kind of locked in on this one thing. What helps you kind of get, locked in, zoned in on that one thing that you're trying to focus on? Or when you're saying no to all those things, like what's that process look like for you to really streamline things?
Um, to really streamline things, I feel like having it's almost a game, right? Like, I have to be so available that when the thing shows up in which I'm best at, I can do it every single time, right? So sales, networking, some of the people in my network are substantial, and it's happened because I was available to put myself in the right room at the right time. And because I was authentic, I was the right person in the right
Yeah.
room at the right time. Because it's all those things. It's got to be that perfect storm. You can't be a schmuck in the right room talking to somebody relevant. That deal's done, dude. You
Yeah.
gotta
Right.
you gotta have the confidence in your abilities. So that's why I say I only like to do what I do best. Um, and so that's really kind of what does it for me is I love momentum. I love momentum in sales. I love momentum in marketing. I love momentum in uh, introductions and collaborations. So that's usually what does it for me is I move quickly to get to that place I'm good at. Like I was on a call at a manager's meeting this morning before this, and something came up. Like it's almost outsourcing and delegation is almost like a second language for me. Like if something lands on my plate that I instinctively know is not something I'm good at, I immediately kick it to somebody else. I'm like, hey, I need you to do this.
Yeah.
Hey, Kris, I need this from you. I'm like, all right, perfect. You got this. Right. Like it's just a deflection. Right. So for me, I think that's what really keeps me in the zone
Yeah.
is deflection and being able to do it. Now, I'm not always doing it. I'm not always that damn good at it. Right. Because when you get to a certain level, you feel as if you're good enough at many things that you can do them all and do them well, but you can't, by the way.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Especially
really
if you want to
identifying
grow.
what you're best at.
Yeah. You can't be the superhero and try to take on everything yourself and still expect to grow
It's
and
tough.
reach that vision that you want, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody that thinks that, I mean, there's a few unicorns out there and a few, anomalies, but God damn, I've been around so many people who think like they're the catalyst of success. I'm like, come on, bro, get out of
Lead
here.
other people. Yeah, it takes a village, right?
It's
Yeah.
foolish. It's foolish. They're foolish. And I've heard it so many times. It's like, yeah, you may be damn good at some things, but you suck at other things. So it's usually that kind of collection of your sphere of influence. So I'm in a mastermind. About 120 of us. It's called the Board of Advisors, and I'm the first member of Board of Advisors. It's boardofadvisors.com is what it is, and it's a group of about 120 players. A players, alphas,
Yeah. Yeah.
founders, starters, CEOs, badasses, and we get together every quarter, and that's what it's about. It's about like I'm really good at this, but I suck at this. Help me, right? And I think that anybody that's not seeking counsel is making a huge mistake, and sometimes that comes from. I think it comes from an honest place sometimes where they feel like if they seek counsel, it takes them off of what they're doing, right? So some
Yeah.
people that have to be like one thing at a time. Others it's an ego thing, and I think that's much more dangerous.
Sure. Some people don't
People
like to
think
be vulnerable. Yeah. No.
sure, sure, and being in a group that promotes that on the highest level is really empowering. It's actually quite the opposite. It's empowering more than anything because it's like, oh my God, I have all this support. I'm going to come out the other side of this okay, right? So I think seeking counsel, also again, right back to the, I'm not actually getting too far off track. How
No.
this
Yeah.
relates to what your question was how do I stay on track? I don't try to do the things I'm not good at anymore
Mm-hmm.
because
You
that
stay
is the
in your,
biggest
yeah,
time
you stay in
suck
your zone.
on earth. You
Yeah.
know, what's the best that happens? You become moderately good at your weaknesses. What the hell's the point of that? I've heard people make comments like, "Oh, if you don't know something, you should go learn it." It's like, actually, there's somebody that already knows it, and how fast can you find that person and then not do it? Unless it's
Yeah.
something you want to learn and want to do and want to get great at, but don't ask a fish to climb a tree, man.
That's
And
true.
oftentimes that's what
Can't,
happens.
can't be a jack of all trades and expect to be an
Yeah,
absolute badass at something. You
yeah.
know,
He'll
you
catch
gotta,
up to you. He'll catch up to you real quick because you end up with a time suck. Like what I do best, I can do at lightning speed
Mhm.
better than most when it comes to sales, marketing, creativity, networking, connecting dots, doing deals, like that is my superpower. So every time I get outside of that and I start doing like IT stuff or web design or all this other, it's like, oh my God, like it's 5 times longer than it should be and it still sucks. Like,
Right. Yeah.
that was the point of that, you know?
Like I'll just hire someone who's actually really good. The same type
Yeah.
of zone of what I'm good at all these other things. This is their expertise. So I'm going to let them.
It's just another way of seeking counsel, man.
Yeah. It kind of, yeah, you're very right. You gotta, it's almost like the quote from Nick Saban where he was like, hey, we got to put the right people in the right places, the right positions to make sure that we're putting ourselves in the best place to win. Right. And if
Sounds simple.
yeah, it does sound simple. I'm sure it's like building a team
It's
and,
not.
a lot of things like that, and especially probably at your warehouse and all the other businesses, like you got to have the right people leading. Otherwise,
Mhm.
things can kind of fall to the wayside.
Yep.
And whether that's, I kind of come around this concept of leading from the pack, where sometimes the best leaders aren't the ones who are at the very tip spearhead. Sometimes they're the ones that are, kind of leading the people who are the mass majority and getting them to one collective spot to continue to go where the spearhead's going, right? Like they already know what the vision is, but they're also in that main group where they're constantly around them, they're constantly motivating them, kind of like a player who's not the captain, but they're the guy that can kind of shift that momentum a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
Or even, the whole pack of wolves concept where you have someone who's in the back that's probably the more elite one that's going to make sure everyone else goes in front because they're letting the older wolves come up front and then they're kind of going at their pace and pushing them from the back
Well, I
forward.
think understanding what kind of leader you are is important too.
That
So
too.
that comes
Yeah.
back amazingly. It comes back to reflection. Like, so what kind of leader are you? What kind of leader should you be? Because there's some really uninspiring people that try to be leaders. And if that's just not your bag, you should probably hand that off. I've found what I'm really good at is from a visionary standpoint is getting other people to buy into my vision and to
Mhm.
see what I see as clearly as I see it. And then you kind of just fade back. Hey, did we all see where we're going? We all kind of have an idea how we're going to get there. Houdini gone. Now, I said it. Oh, I guess I started saying maybe about last year before. Give direction, not directions, right? And that's what a vision. That's what a vision is. It's just like you give the direction. You see where we're going. That's where we're going. Do you feel it? Do you smell it? Do you taste it? Can you hear it? You hear what that sounds like, feels like. You see how you can you imagine how you feel when we're there, right? And just get so many of these elements and they're buying in. We're like, all right, you got that? Yeah, I can see that. Can you see that? And then you're like, all right, now that y'all see that, I'll be back. I'm gonna go work on what I do best. And it's amazing that we've built the team and culture we have at Dugout Mugs with little management. It's very little management. Now, we weren't the best at managing anyway, to be honest with you. So it was more about creating something that people take ownership in, and
Mhm.
there's the culture, right? Like, and
Oh
this is
yeah,
the thing in the
you can get
vision.
that into extreme ownership or whatever label you
Yeah,
want to throw on it, but
yeah,
it's definitely a thing where guys and any team, if they don't take care of themselves and hold themselves to a higher standard, you can't expect everyone else to be doing
right,
the same thing. And you can't just have that one manager who's, like you said, micromanaging or giving directions because things could change. Like you guys could make a pivot to go to, maybe a different direction. The vision's still the same, but it's like, hey, if you're using these directions as more XYZ, I have to do this system every single time. And there's no there's no authenticity, there's no autonomy is the word I'm looking for, right? There's no autonomy for them to be able to go in and still get to where they need to go. But whether or not how they get there, as long as they get to that point is what really matters.
yeah. Keeping your eye on the prize, as they say.
That's it. That's it. Well, Kris, I really appreciate you coming on, my man. Feel free to plug all the stuff, and I'll put these in the show notes too. But I know you mentioned Dugout Mugs quite a bit. I think you said that you had a cigar line and also the golf company
Yeah,
too.
so I got a golf line. It's called Big Golf. It's pretty
Big golf.
cool actually. So I again, like I wanted to live an experiential life. I don't believe in work-life balance. Like it's all life. Sometimes you're working. Like right now I'm working a lot.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm with family, sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm fun, sometimes I'm not, right? But it's just I started bringing in the things that I enjoy. I like beer, I like baseball, I like golf, I like cigars, and I like going to cool events with awesome people and having access to things that most people can't, right? And so I built consciously and subconsciously, I've built businesses around those things. So, Big Golf is my golf line. It's a distance golf ball, really cool. We have some cigar accessories and some things like that that are fun. We hollow out golf balls and turn them into
Yeah.
cigar holders, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, the golf balls are really good, actually. Um, really good. And then the cigar line, I was like, well, I have a company called Big Golf, so I make big balls, which is hilarious. So we launched a cigar called the Big Stick, and if you know anything about golf, the Big Stick is slang for your driver.
Yeah.
So we got the Big Stick cigar, and it's a 12-month age Habano seed. It's really, 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 really good. But yeah, so we got that, and then Dugout Mugs. I mean, we're going to keep doing our thing. We're going to continue to innovate. We're going to continue to, um, you know, test new waters and going in. We're actually in the process of going into some new countries right now, which is pretty sweet. A lot of new chains. We got picked up by some smaller Hallmark chains and Dick's, and so we got some wholesale distribution out in the market now, which is kind of cool for the brand. And we're just gonna keep running and see what happens. But that's what I got going on.
I love it. I love it. Well, appreciate you again. And how can someone kind of reach out to you, or if is there anything you want to plug as
I
far as
mean,
like
I'm on
social?
I'm on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn?
One of the things I've been having fun with lately is trying to find complementary products and companies. I've uh, successfully acquired equity in several companies, and then I'm using some of our social and digital assets. I have 1 million people on a customer list, for example, to
Right.
then launch pad new ideas that are in line with what we're doing with Dugout or Big Golf. So that's obviously something I always keep my eyes open for, because I have the things other people's don't. Other people in other companies don't, and that's the ability to go to the masses quickly. Because what's happening right now, I believe, and it's going to keep getting worse, especially in a political season, is the paid traffic is going to multiply in cost. It's going to double, triple. God, I hope it doesn't quadruple. But for those that live and die by Facebook, Instagram, and Google ads, you're about to get wrecked.
Mhm.
So trying to collaborate is something I'm really focused on right now, because it's a win-win. You have eyes, I have a cool product. I have eyes, you have a cool product. And then come up with the deal structure is something I'm very good at. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on. All my socials private. I don't, again,
Oh yeah,
I'm not wasting time on that.
that's true. There you
I
go.
don't care. Like
Circles back
like
to
how
time.
many likes I get on a post has no bearing, man. I don't give a shit. Now, LinkedIn's a little different because I get to meet some different types of folks over there. And that's nice. And it allows me to kind of help develop and grow. I still do consulting from time to time, depends on the person, depends on the project. Only good people, only cool products, only short periods, you know, um, in and out, help them best I can. So I still do some of that. And that's why I keep LinkedIn around. But otherwise, biggolf.com, dugoutmugs.com. That's where it is.
Love it. Awesome. Appreciate it, Chris. And for those of you listening, stay in the zone.